Jeff and Jesse back up in your grill, about to start breaking down the fantasy matchups that are NFL week number 6. And Jeff, right now we talked in the intro in the first segment about how the fantasy season is really cruising right along here. Most leagues out there have about 13, maybe 14, depending upon your format, 14 weeks or so to establish which teams will be making the fantasy playoffs. And most of those leagues also employ a trading deadline, usually around like week 10 or 11. So right now, fantasy owners need to realize that they're entering this crunch time over the next 4 or 5 weeks. They're really going to be setting the table for a championship run if they're going to make one.
Yeah, that's right. You want to take a look at the scope of your league and your personal situation right now. Depending on what your record is at this point, you most likely have a chance to affect your team a little bit and get through the bye weeks and onto your playoff push. But around Thanksgiving is when the trade deadline happens, and you're going to want to have a good feel for what the end of the season is going to hold in the NFL and what you can do to make your team to its most highest potential when that time comes. So if you're struggling at tight end or quarterback, it's time to start thinking about a long-term answer.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great time right now to kind of scan across the league and take a look at some of the owners that are in your league, guys that maybe are a little downtrodden. Maybe you've got a frustrated owner who's sitting at 1-4, might be really looking to shake some things up. Maybe you've got a guy who is flying high at 4-1, and you might not be able to offer that guy much. Target the owners that are a little bit more down in your league, might be a little bit more encouraged to make a deal. And as Jeff was mentioning earlier on our website this week, I thought you brought up a really nice point, Jeff, and one of the things you posted at testosteronesports.com, looking at players like a Brian Westbrook as a buy low candidate right now. I mean, because right now is a time in our fantasy, throughout our fantasy season, where you can really acquire some pieces that can ultimately help you win.
Yeah, and there's several guys who are down a lot like Brian Westbrook. That you can kind of think, are going to start to build momentum as the season goes. Some guys will be second half players, and you really want to be able to move some of your guys who have been performing well early for guys who will perform well later on. So take a look at some of the schedules out there. Some Browns come to mind right now. A guy like Braylon Edwards, Kellen Winslow Jr. has yet to achieve his full potential. This is a team that once they make that quarterback change, which I think will happen this week, very, very soon, then I think they're going to start to build some momentum here as the season progresses. So
you didn't accept my trade offer for Kellen Winslow Jr. earlier this week?
Oh, I remember you were offering me a shiny turd for him, I think.
Yeah, I was trying to get him from you. Great minds think alike, and that's what we're trying to convey to you is right now, begin to set the table for your fantasy run. It's week 6, but time is passing quickly here. So as always, we want to pimp our website, testosteronesports.com. There's tons of information on there. If you haven't been on there already, go on there as soon as this show is over. We will be conducting a fat chat, a live fantasy chat where we help you with all of your matchup related questions, and you can also throw any different questions at us throughout the course of your season. Who should I be targeting? Who should I be trading? Those types of things, all in play. Fat chat going down after the show.
Yeah, something we do each and every week. We do it for strategy purposes, so come on, say hello, and let's get to know each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Super fun time.
And so diving into the first matchup here as we begin to get the matchup breakdowns going, Chicago traveling to Atlanta to face a Falcons team, Jeff, that's really starting to make some waves. I remember early on in Michael Vick's days with the Falcons, he had a statement game going into Green Bay and winning, I believe, in the playoffs. And I'm not saying this game by the Falcons last week where they beat Green Bay was of that same magnitude, but let's face it, man, Matt Ryan looks like he's for real.
Yeah, and a lot of Falcons have a lot of positivity going for them right now. A big surprise to me, and I know a lot of other people too, it's been interesting to watch the way they've done it. At first, they were kind of holding the reins back on Ryan, and he had a great game to start with, but it was a surprise. He hooked up with Roddy White on like a 60-yard bomb.
First play of the game.
But the story right away for the Falcons was the running back, Michael Turner, and the way that he was able to get positive yards on the ground, it seemed at will. And he's done a great job so far on the season, having a great beginning here, and their team has been able to respond as well. So it's been very interesting for me to watch them, and I'm interested to see what they do. They face another team, probably not as good as the Packers. Here they play Chicago. They're at home. Smells like an upset to me, Jesse.
It could be. I mean, if the Falcons come out and win this game, I think teams are really going to take notice. Last week was one of those games where, they went into Green Bay and they won that contest. They played a very solid game, both offensively and defensively. We talked about John Abraham before, playing at a very high level for their defense right now. But to me, Chicago is the type of squad that matches up really well against Atlanta. They're going to want to control the clock. They've got a young running back themselves in Matt Forte, who's really making a name for himself, scored 2 touchdowns last week. He's a must-play for fantasy owners here in this matchup. And as crazy as it sounds, Kyle Orton is progressing. I'm beginning to think that Lovie Smith knew exactly what he was doing. Orton playing better than I think Rex Grossman would have been playing at this point.
Yeah, well, I mean, in that situation, you're kind of like what we're doing. You're trying to pick the shiniest turd.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So he has done very well, though. So it's been impressive to see. And they don't have a real good wide receiver core. So he's doing it without a lot of good talent around him. And so it's been an interesting thing to see the way that they handled Detroit last week, 34-0, and here they are. They're in the lead in the division because the Packers have fallen back to the rest of us, and so now they have a chance to go into Atlanta. To me, it feels like a real low-scoring game where the winning team is going to play the right defense and then find the room on the ground.
Miami, a surprise squad over the past couple games. They travel this week to play the Houston Texans. Now, the Dolphins have won 2 consecutive games here. They're really getting the ball going on the ground. Ronnie Brown looking very solid of late, and the Texans were the team out of these 2 in the preseason that we would have thought was turning things around. But the Texans look a little disheveled. They lose a heartbreaker last week to the Colts, a game they possibly could have won. Who's going to come out on top between these 2 squads?
Well, this was
here,
a tough one to pick. The Dolphins in the last 2 weeks, they beat the Patriots, and then they took out the Chargers, and they're doing it with style. I love the Wildcat formation and what it does to surprise and keep defenses on their heels.
Right.
And Ronnie Brown's talent is really starting to rise to the top for this team. So Bill Parcells is showing that he's a genius yet again by turning around another team from in the cellar, and they're doing it to the surprise of everybody. They have a solid defense, although they're without Jason Taylor now, and they split Chad Pennington to the wide receiver.
Right.
How is it even possible that this is going on?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing. I mean, if you're a Dolphins fan, you have to love what you've been seeing. Ronnie Brown coming off of this ACL injury, I was a little bit concerned, honestly. I thought it might take him 6 or 8 or 10 games to recover some of that speed and elusiveness he had. But look, Ronnie Brown is a must-start for fantasy players from this point forward. He is proving himself that when he's on the field and he is healthy, and it looks like he is, you got to have him in your lineup. I think he goes off big here in this game for Houston. The question mark for me is there about to be a quarterback change in Houston? Because last week was the first time that Andre Johnson really got the thing going at the wide receiver position, and he was doing so with Sage Rosenfels at quarterback. Jeff, I know you're a Matt Schaub guy or have been, own him in a league or 2. Which one of these quarterbacks should the Texans be playing at this
Well,
point?
I mean, to me, it seemed like Sage Rosenfels kind of lost that game for them last week. Down the stretch, they were up on Indianapolis, and Indianapolis roared back. The game was in Texas.
Right.
And so Sage Rosenfels, he made a play where he scrambled for the first down, went airborne on it, and fumbled. And you can't have that late in a game when you're up by just a little bit, especially against an explosive offense like the Colts.
Right.
So you don't want to put the ball in Peyton Manning's hand with the chance to win at the end of the game. It makes sense. So I think that there was a couple other things that Rosenfels did to prove that he's right now a backup quarterback in the NFL, and I wasn't surprised at all that the Texans came out on Monday and named Schaub the starter.
Right.
So he will start in this game. Those of us, although a very small group who got burned by Matt Schaub, that prick last week, should go ahead and start him anyway and enjoy the rewards that are to come, because I do think that he's going to throw the ball very well, and Houston is hungry for a win, and I just think that it's going to be a hard-fought matchup. Because
Steve Slayton owners should not be delusional here. Slayton's had a couple really nice games in a row. Let's remember that Miami held in check the Patriots running game and also held in check LaDainian Tomlinson last week. So although Slayton is startable, I don't think you're going to see those gaudy totals like you've seen the last couple weeks from Steve Slayton here.
Dolphins defense is ranked 10th right now, overall defense. So
that's pretty solid. Without Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas.
Right.
Baltimore traveling to Indianapolis to face up with the Colts team that cannot get it going defensively. They got ripped, as we talked about last week, by Houston, who is definitely not a premier offense. Here comes to town another team that struggles offensively but can run the ball, Jeff. I think the Colts win this game, but I'm not going to be surprised if Baltimore does some damage on the ground here.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly what we're talking about here in this game. Indy sucks at rush defense. So
badly.
Anytime they play your players, put them in. And at this point right now, we're uncertain about the status of Willis McGahee. And if he doesn't go or is going to be limited, then I think LaRon McClain makes a great start for your bye week fill-in. You're not going to feel too bad if you have to put him in the game. In this situation, he's going to get around 20 carries and probably in the end zone once, potentially twice.
Right.
And they're going to try to run the ball and slow that clock down and keep Peyton Manning on the sideline.
Yeah, that's really their only chance to keep this game close is a power running game and kill the clock. Colts defense, like Jeff said, bad on the against the ground on the ground game, but the Baltimore defense is very stout against the ground game. And although Joseph Adai has scored some touchdowns, he hasn't had that breakout game. I'm thinking that Joseph Adai might be held under wraps here, Jeff. What do you think?
I think Joseph Adai is your number one sell-high player in the NFL. And one of the reasons is because I personally view him as the most injury-prone risk at running back that's high risk and high reward out there. And you're either going to get 28 points or 2.8 points from him.
Right.
And so I think that he's got that top
Good
five
point.
value still, and you can send him out there and you can get 2 players for him. If you're dealing with a quarterback problem or a tight end problem, you could probably get another running back a little less premier, like a Chris Johnson and a Kellen Winslow, or Chris Johnson and Brett Favre type of a guy.
Right.
And you can fix some needs by selling high on this player who has another tough matchup. I don't think he's going to get much going, and the near future, looks tough for him at the best.
I'm going to be watching Peyton Manning really closely in this game. I still don't think that knee is 100% right. He had to come from behind to beat the Texans. I think the blitzing defense that Baltimore employs is going to get in his face, going to rough him up a little. That offensive line is not right. Although I do think the Colts will win, I don't see a big offensive output here from him. And I think Marvin Harrison is proving, as you said in the preseason, he's not a guy you can rely on a weekly basis.
Well, we've been known to disagree fervently on this show in the past, and I'm going to have to disagree with you fervently about
You're
this.
Crazy,
game, Jesse.
man. Oh wait, that's your line.
And the reason is because the history that these two teams have together, they've done it in the playoffs, they've done it in high-profile games each season in the last few years. The Colts always struggle at home against Baltimore, and I think this is the year that Baltimore gets them in the end.
Nice.
And if the score is really as low as you're saying it is, that totally plays into the hands of the Ravens. And I really definitely think that it could happen.
Wow.
So it'll be interesting to see. I went out there and stuck my neck out in major fashion, got chopped off at the Willie last week, so I won't remind us all about which one that was, but I'm going to do it again, going out on a limb.
Nice.
The Colts go down.
Picking Baltimore. The final matchup of this segment, Jeff, running short on time. Oakland traveling to New Orleans to face a team that got their heart broke last week. They definitely outplayed the Vikings for a majority of that contest, still lost. Now they welcome another team that's kind of like the AFC version of the Vikings in a lot of different ways. Power running game, unproven quarterback position, Oakland, New Orleans.
I think New Orleans gets healthy in a major way here this week against Oakland. Oakland's not that great of a team as far as winning goes. Drew Brees show all game long he's going to hook up with everybody on the field. Reggie Bush makes a great play. And your sleeper defense of the week is definitely the Saints. Go out and get them if you can, because when Reggie is running the football like that in the return game, they can win games for you. And we've seen it happen before, and it just happened this past week. And I think that could continue to be the way they put points on the board. They can't produce as much without Colston or Shockey, so they got to find other ways to win, and that's how they're doing it.
Well, the other thing we have to mention here is that Marcus Colston did return to practice on Wednesday and is catching the ball with a very light pad on his finger. Initially, they said he would miss 6 to 8 weeks. This is week number 5. There is a possibility that Marcus Colston may play in this game, and if Colston plays this week, put him in your lineup immediately. This offense is ready to explode. I don't think there's going to be any issue with him.
But he's going to be facing against Nnamdi Asomugha, and that guy's awesome at stopping a top-flight receiver. So to me, it's like one of the best cornerbacks in the league who's been in action, one of the best receivers in the league, but who hasn't had any action. I think he'd get bottled up.
Well, we'll see. I got Colston, and I've been sitting on him for 5 weeks, man.
You can't wait.
You can't tell me I'm going to play.
Which of those fingers did he hurt?
I don't know.
He's got to stop sticking it up there, you know what I'm saying?
Hey.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back.